And hello again, and here we have my Moto Guzzi cafe project, which has been much delayed because I've been busy with other projects, and it's been sitting in my garage for the last year or so untouched. But now I've moved it here into my conservatory where I can do a bit more work on it. And what I want to do is complete the wiring. That's the main thing in the next few weeks. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of cables around here, so I've spent a fair bit of time getting this all ready. Looks very untidy, but it's not far off from being done, except for the fact that I'm just about to tear it all out and start all over again. And the reason for doing that is not because the work I've done so far is particularly bad, because I don't think it is. I mean, I've got some nice multi-block connectors there, all pretty neat and tidy. I can make it look pretty good. No, it's because I think I can do a lot better by using the Moto Gadget M unit, which I've just finished fitting to my Norley, and it's also fitted to my Merch 131. So I'm pretty impressed with the M unit and its switchgear, and it will simplify the wiring tremendously, as well as giving me a few options that I don't have with a standard setup like this. For example, it has a built-in alarm and immobiliser, which is pretty handy. So I've got to first of all take all this out, not quite all of it, but a fair bit of it, and yeah, start again. But the first thing to do, of course, is to order the M unit and switchgear, which I've sort of been putting off because it's quite expensive. The basic M unit is £245, and the switches I want, there's actually two of them I need on one either side, they're about £90 each, so add it all up and it can get quite expensive. But I think the bike deserves it, so today I'm just about to go off and order those parts from my local bike shop. And here we have the M unit, the basic version, on my Norley that I just fitted. And here's that second M unit fitted to my Evo road bike, my 131 Merch. What I do like about them, they've got some great functions. They're very small, very easy to fit, and in this case here it squeezes between the top of the oil tank and the bottom of the seat, so you can see how small it is. And what that means is that I don't need to have a fuse box anymore, I don't need to have the relay for the starter, I don't need this bus bar, and I don't even need the flasher unit. All that can go and will be replaced by the M unit. And in a similar vein, when I replace the switchgear I've got now with the new stuff, I'll get rid of an awful lot of these wires. Now, to be fair, this switchgear is pretty cheap and cheerful. It cost me, I think, £17 for the pair. Can't argue with that, they're pretty well made. They're steel outers, so I'm pretty happy with them. Whereas the new stuff is about 10 times more expensive than that, so it better had be pretty damn good. But anyway, it will make things a lot easier, a lot simpler, and clean up the wiring greatly. And so now I'm in the middle of removing all the components and all the wiring that I don't need anymore. And sadly, you know, it took me a while to do all this a while ago. It's pretty much everything has to go. Having fitted the M unit to my Norley, I did find it's much easier just to start again rather than trying to reuse what I've already done. And that's because pretty much all the wiring circuits are completely different when you fit an M unit. And I'll explain why that's the case when I've finished removing all this wiring on the bike. And since it's much easier to work on the wiring off the bike than on it, I'm just going to remove everything I can, and then I can redo the connections and so on in the comfort of my living room. So all this stuff is going to come off the bike. There's the ignition key there, look, and yeah, I'll redo it indoors where it's nice and warm and comfortable. And there we are, there's all the parts off the bike. Handlebar switches, ignition barrel, idiot lights, fuse box, bus bar, relays, flasher units and so on. So with that gone now, I can start to rethink and plan out a new wiring harness to use the M unit. And even though the M unit I've ordered hasn't arrived yet, I can still plan out the wiring diagram for the Guzzi before it arrives, since I've fitted one once before. And although this looks quite complicated, it really is a lot simpler than it would have been without the M unit. And I can show you that now because here I've got my original wiring diagram I made a few years ago for the Guzzi using the conventional fuse box and so on. And that doesn't look too bad, except that's just page 1. It's actually got page 2 and also page 3. So I've gone from 3 pages to just 1 page, which makes life a lot easier. And while I don't have an M unit at the moment, I do have an empty box that it came in. And so let's look at this M unit now in detail and try and explain how it works. And what we've got is 2 sides to the M unit. You've got input and output. and you've got 12 input sockets and 12 output sockets. And what that does is it separates the control of a circuit from the power that drives the circuit. And that doesn't sound particularly important, but it makes a hell of a difference to the complexity of a circuit and the whole wiring diagram overall. And to explain why, what I'll do is I'll draw out a simple circuit with and without the M unit, and so we can see the differences. Okay, so we'll start off with a blank bit of paper, and let's imagine we're going to make a circuit to drive something simple like the horn. So we'll have a big circle here. That would be the old horn there, and that has 2 wires going into it. We have the power going in, and we have an earth to the frame going out. On this side then, to make it work, all I need to do is add a battery. So we'll draw that out here. Template here, there's a positive, negative, and if we connect that up, and then we connect this to the earth, which with the frame, which basically links up the earths on both sides, the horn will now sound, but it will sound permanently, which is no good. So instead, of course, we need to add a switch halfway, circle there maybe, and that is now a switch. That will be the button on the handlebar, and so when you hit that button, the horn goes. Great, that's it. Except, of course, now that will work always when the ignition's off or on, and that's no good. And so we've now got to add another switch here. Let's put it there, which will be for the ignition. So now we've got 2 switches and the unit works. But hang on a minute, we need one more thing yet, and what we need is a fuse, just in case things go wrong. You don't want to burn out your wiring, so we'll add, I'll just draw that there, nice big loop there, and that's the fuse. And so now we've got a full circuit. But of course, the problem is the wires where these go are in completely different places all over the bike. So you've got an awful lot of wiring going front to back to front on the bike to accomplish that particular circuit. But okay, it's not too complicated. But let's now add a bit more complexity, and let's try and do something with, oh, I don't know, the headlamp. So I'll quickly draw out the headlamp. Dum, dum, dum. And once again, we have the battery. Let's find that there. And this time, things are going to get a bit more involved. There's the earth, there's the positive, and we've got a lamp there, and it's got a high beam and a low beam. So we're going to have 2 different circuits, and of course, both of them are earthed. That's fine there, but now I've got 2 wires going through to the headlamp, high beam and low beam, H and low. And now hang on a minute, to get that to work, we need to go through 2 switches, 1, 2, dum, dum, dum. And then we need to go through a fuse, or a combined fuse perhaps, doesn't really matter, but they can both go through there, dum, dum, dum. Hang on, and there we've got a very simple circuit for the headlamp, except of course I've also forgotten, I also need another switch for the ignition. So we'll stick it in there. And there's no switch for ignition, so straight away I've got 1, 2, 3 switches, I've got the fuse, lots of wires going back and 2, not ideal. However, if we now consider the M unit, let's try a, hopefully you can see this, running out of room. Once again, we've got the battery, and that's fine, dun, dun, dun. Negative, positive. But now rather than going through to a full circuit, it's going to go into the M unit. So, dum, 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 dum. Little M unit there, and in fact we've got 1 power line that comes in, and that's it. Now we've got 2 wires coming out, they're the outputs, they're going to the headlamp, and where's my circle gone? Yeah, we'll do another circle. Boom, boom, boom. So that's high beam and low beam, that's still the same, still got a earth there, but on this side, on the control side, I've got a separate switch down here on the handlebars which goes into the M unit, and the point is, it's very simple, there are actually 2 wires because there's high beam and low beam, and there's no direct connection between the wires for the switch here on the handlebars and the power lines going to the headlamp, and that makes life a lot simpler. Also, if you use the official switchgear from M-Unit, you've got one button there and it does everything. You press it once to turn on the light, press it again to go to high beam, press it again to go back down to low beam, and keep it pressed in for 2 seconds, it turns off the whole lot. So I've got no fuse box to worry about because it's built into the M-Unit, and I've got this separation of the wiring, which again makes life so much easier. If you want to change something or something goes wrong, it's really easy to sort out a problem, because there are little LEDs here as well which tell you what's going on in the M-Unit. Yeah, it's pretty good. And then if I bring back this box here, you see that hopefully, the wires just go straight in as a bare wire, and they're held in place by these little buttons here, these little orange squares. You're going to push them in, push in the wire, bare wire, let go, and it locks it into place. I would say though, these are very small and fiddly, and I had to use a little matchstick to press them down because they're quite hard to press down. You can't really do it with your fingernail. But once that's done, it's just so easy to change things around and get things working in there. Yeah, so also of course the M-Unit includes a alarm system, immobiliser, it's got a built-in fuse box, and it just makes life a lot easier when you're working with a complicated wiring diagram like this here. Yeah, so overall I'm pretty happy with the M-Unit, and hopefully you can see the differences there between an old-fashioned circuit and the M-Unit. What else can I say? Yeah, when the ignition key is actually turned on here, that sends power to the M-Unit, which unlocks everything. So without the ignition key being turned on, all these circuits are dead and you can't actually operate the bike whatsoever. Anyway, that's a quick overview of how the M-Unit works. Hopefully you can follow that. And again, the key thing is it separates the input from the output. The inputs being switches such as the brake light switch, the handlebar switches, what else? The horn and so on, and the output being everything else, the lights, the ignition, brake lights and so on. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Just a damn shame it's so expensive. This is £245 retail, and you really do need to have the, I think they're called momentary switchgear to make this thing work. The good news is though, you don't need to buy the M-Unit switches, because now there's plenty of options out there which work in the same way, which you can also use. And actually that's an option I'm going with on my Guzzi, and when they arrive I'll explain why. But yeah, I would say though, you really do need to have those momentary contact switches to use this thing, because if you're using a standard switchgear, there's no point using this because it will not give you all the functions that you want to use. Yeah, so that's a quick overview of the M-Unit Basic. There's also one called an M-Unit Blue, I think, which gives you Bluetooth connectivity to your phone and also keyless ignition, but I don't really need that, so I'll do without. Yeah, so that's the M-Unit. Hopefully you can follow that, and now I've just got to wait for mine to arrive and I can carry on and wire up the Guzzi. So anyway, thanks for watching and cheers.